This video embarks on the continuation of the Romanian adventure. I have finally arrived in its capital, and it gives me great pleasure to invite you to join me on a stroll through the city. As it's often the case, I cannot include everything in a single video, so if anyone after all this history and architecture is still keen on discovering eclairs that rival the Parisian ones, drop me a line below and I'll point you in the right direction. It dawned on me that Romania as a unified state only took shape in 1861. Before that, there were distinct principalities like Moldavia, Wallachia and the infamous Transylvania. Bucharest too assumed its role as the capital around the same period. Consequently, you won't find enchanting medieval structures here. Instead, you'll encounter ancient churches and the 19th century buildings in the famous Beaux Arts style, earning Bucharest the rightful title of the Little Paris of the East. The city even boasts a topography reminiscent of Paris, though it opts for sectors instead of districts. However, the visual cues are strikingly similar. A series of wars and a communist upheaval later brought classical buildings, adding a layer to Bucharest's architectural narrative. But let's explore all this in order. Bucharest is in fact pretty young, first mentioned in 1459 when Prince Vlad III, the Impaler, or you may know him as Dracula, constructed a fortress to safeguard Wallachia from the Turks. The city around the fortress was initially named Dâmbovița, after the river flowing through it. The river is still there and I will show it later. The shift to Bucharest remains shrouded in mystery, although there's a legend involving a local shepherd named Bucur. As usual with these urban legends, this one is a total nonsense with no proofs, and I'd say it's a bit too much for such a humble person, so the real details are as elusive as a well-crafted myth. Let's take off from the communist legacy, marked by one of Bucharest's most well-known sites, the Palace of Parliament. After the Carpathian earthquake of 1977 and the awakened love for North Korea, more on this later, Ceausescu's vision was to consolidate all Romanian ministries and departments under one roof, sadly leading to the demolition of a fifth of the Bucharest's historic center. Then this giant was called the House of the Republic, and after the 1989 revolution it was renamed the People's House. This absolutely colossal administrative building, the heaviest civil in the world and second only to the Pentagon, began construction in 1984. So much marble was needed for that for some time tombstones in Romania had to be made from other materials. And yet, by the time Ceausescu was overthrown, the palace was not completed. In general, it's still not finished, although both houses of parliament, the constitutional court and 3 museums are working in it. And yet, 70% of the building is still empty. The palace above the ground is 12 stories high. That's 86 meters, but in fact, it's even bigger down than up. It's 92 meters below the ground. The above ground part has been completed, but of the 8 underground levels, only 4 are completely ready. At the very bottom, a bunker is predictably located for the event of a nuclear war. All this adds to 365,000 square meters of area and more than 4 million tons of weight. Despite being incomplete and settling annually by 6 millimeters because of its incredible weight, the palace stands as a testament to totalitarian aesthetics. In the vicinity of the palace, you'll find the official structures of the ministries in a similar style, standing steadfast to this day. Behind these governmental edifices lie residential structures reserved for those entitled by their status. These dwellings showcase unconventional designs characteristic of places accessible only to the privileged few. It's just so remarkable how rulers of such ilk share striking similarities with one another. For now, let's conclude the exploration of this style, though we'll need to revisit it towards the end. Venturing a bit further, we encountered typical residential buildings for central Bucharest. The historic church of St. Spyridon intertwined with a clinic named after Nadia Comaneci, one of the few Romanian athletes in my knowledge. Well, who else? Gheorghe Hagi and Simona Halep. That's about it. Extending from the palace is a boulevard adorned with 15 small, 16 medium and one immense fountain, all synchronized in operation. And yes, I have counted them. Admittedly, it might not be awe-inspiring, but it's undeniably captivating to observe. Moreover, each fountain is distinct, and you can approach them even if the official passengers seem absent. But who's bothered? Beyond the size, the fountains are noteworthy for their mosaic designs. There's a sports-themed fountain with various balls and athletes, and another, well, challenging to categorize, ichthyological perhaps. It showcases a variety of fish. And a summer one featuring butterflies, flowers and leaves. Appearance-wise, it seems to me that the mosaic designs should be continued, and these empty marble inserts are remnants of restoration. I'm also puzzled as to why the water immediately exits the fountains. Considering the height of the pipes, the level could easily be raised by another 20 or 30 centimeters. The grand fountain is more intriguing, although it also remains unclear to me why there's so little water in it. Now, as I mapped out the route, the thought crossed my mind that it might be pleasant to ditch walking and, taking a cue from my London experience, utilize an electric scooter. Bucharest is teeming with them, and there shouldn't be any issues. This could undoubtedly save a considerable amount of time and effort. As far as I understand, the same providers operate here as everywhere else. However, I recently switched phones, and the old applications I used in Berlin, for instance, disappeared. Frankly, I never got around to installing new ones, so I walked. Nevertheless, I highly recommend opting for a scooter. Let me continue with the so-called New Church of St. John from 1774. Much like many churches in Bucharest, it stands kind of wedged between neighboring houses. And this is a true impression. Originally, it stood along the red line of other buildings of that era. After the 1977 earthquake, the central part of Bucharest was heavily damaged and then rebuilt, and many churches were demolished. In particular, several monasteries and more than 30 churches were destroyed to build the House of the Republic. To save the rest, it was decided to fit them into the new development, and many small churches were simply moved. St. John's Church, for example, moved 23 meters from its original location in 1987. Spotting it in Timișoara, I figured it was worth seeking out in Bucharest. And there you have it, the Bucharest Choral Synagogue. Fortunately, no additional events transpired here, so I merely took a look around. The building itself isn't particularly old, dating back to the 1864-67 and closely resembling Vienna's Tempelgasse Synagogue. It turned its spot in history when in 1866 it was almost completed before being set ablaze by Romanian nationalists, protesting the new constitution's plan to grant Jews Romanian citizenship. King Carol I footed the bill for the estimated 209,000 lei in damages, and I'll share more about him later. In 1940, an earthquake damaged the temple, and a year later it suffered at the hands of local pro-fascist nationalists from the Iron Guard, before they were dispersed that same year. It remained in a dilapidated state until 1945, when it was finally restored. Despite claims that it functions as a synagogue today, I stumbled upon instances where entrance fees were requested, resembling to a museum. The reasons for this remain unclear, as I didn't investigate further. From the somewhat ancient, let's leap to the most ancient part of Bucharest, the Curtea Veche, or the Old Courtyard. This served as the palace for the rulers of Wallachia and Romania, the same fortress restored by Vlad the Impaler. On September 20, 1459, an act was signed here, marking the first mention of Bucharest, albeit under its old name, the Dâmbovița Fortress. Constructed in 1545 by the then ruler Mircea Ciobanu, the Church of St. Anton is considered the oldest building in Bucharest. However, local cats appear entirely indifferent to this antiquity. As promised, here's a glimpse of the Dâmbovița River. Well, you asked for it. Hopefully it looks better outside the city. The Church of St. Demetrius, unlike the compact Church of St. John, enjoys some breathing space. It even has its own plot of land. Inside, you'll find a conventional Orthodox church, but outside, an unconventional system for candle separation awaits. Firstly, all the candles are positioned outdoors, and secondly, they're categorized. Those on the left for the living and on the right for the departed. And, of course, the cats. They couldn't care less about such distinctions. Bucharest embodies a rich tapestry of diversity. Impeccably restored area coexist with others featuring disheartening fences and houses that evoke a mix of sorrow for now and admiration for their former glory. In some corners, Bucharest exudes the charm of Beaux Arts. The second center of this style was Budapest, by the way. While elsewhere, you might chance upon post-Renaissance houses adorned with columns, albeit marred by the watt of an air conditioner. And right nearby, an ode to Art-Deco with metal pillars around the entrance. A dash of Paris indeed. Then a genuine explosion of styles awaits. Pay attention to the details. They're worth hours of contemplation, and this is just a bank building, as old as the century, 1900. It's a pity that it's currently undergoing reconstruction and the main entrance is obscured. In better times, it looks like this. Further up the street stands the Zlatari Church, referring to a jeweler's guild. It too finds itself nestled between towering houses, as I previously mentioned. Today it hosts the right hand of Saint Cyprian as a relic, and you can admire it if you feel so. Historically, the church has graced this area since the 17th century, but succumbed to earthquakes in 1802 and 1832. The structure we see today was built in 1850 and it once boasted a bell tower, until it was dismantled in 1903. After the church, let's delve into the historical heart of Bucharest, the Lipscani district. Not particularly large, it proves quite heterogeneous, as I discovered. Feel free to wander around randomly. There's always a good chance of stumbling upon something really intriguing around the corner. Bisecting the area from north to south is the Brătianu Boulevard. But the main attractions are concentrated in the western part. So if you encounter a crossing, first consider if going there is really necessary. In the very heart of the captivating western section stands the National Bank of Romania. It's like two buildings standing back to back. On one side, an unremarkable massive administrative building, and on the other, a rather elegant and older one in the same Beaux Arts style, featuring an exquisite copper roof. Remember the little Paris of the East? On the corner of the old National Bank building stands a monument dedicated to a man of many roles, a politician, writer, economist and financier, Eugen Curtea, the first director of the National Bank of Romania. For aesthetic reasons, it's worth circling around the bank building, but don't forget to take in the surroundings. Observe the beauty gracing the front of the ungraceful part of the National Bank. Remarkably, it's just a hotel. Moreover, it only holds a 3-star rating, despite its appearance. From this angle, it might seem somewhat truncated, but the facade is flawless. Once again, a touch of Paris. Alright, let's move forward. My apologies, but this is yet another church. This time, however, it boasts noticeable onion domes, the Russian Church of St. Nicholas. Constructed at the beginning of the 20th century, it was suggested by then Russian ambassador to Romania, Mihai I, at a cost of 600,000 rubles in gold, of which less than a third was from the government. Consecrated in 1909, it served as the home church for the Russian embassy. The domestic paintings were only completed in 1948. The iconostasis, entirely made of wood in Moscow, is modeled after either the Archangel Cathedral of the Kremlin or the Kremlin Church of the 12 Apostles, and painted by Viktor Vasnitsov. Despite the affiliation of the church, candles continue to stand on the street. Remember what I mentioned earlier? Perhaps these too has something to do with fire regulations. Along the same street, you can turn into an unassuming courtyard. Nestled within is a closed church, and on the house to the right, an enigmatic coat of arms. Some form of Freemasonry, hammers and compasses all around. If you stroll onto the boulevard and veer right, you'll encounter another rendition of the Capitoline Wolf, another gracious gift from Italy. However, having already laid eyes on the original, well, nearly the original, in Rome, and a duplicate in Timișoara, I opted to explore in the opposite direction. Stretching along the boulevard's opposite side is a lengthy hospital building. Nestled within its embrace is the small church of the Three Hierarchs, standing there since the late 17th century and enduring to this day. The church didn't capture my interest enough to prompt me to cross to the other side. Instead, on my side, I stumbled upon another gracefully restored building, at least from the exterior, boasting a splendid main entrance. Surprisingly, it turned out to be the Bucharest Museum. Just around the corner awaits another nostalgic greeting, a street second-hand bookstore. There's a similar one, albeit a bit more organized, in Madrid, something I showcased in a video from the Spanish capital. A bit farther lies the University of Bucharest. As expected, the building is undergoing renovation, prompting the use of cinematic magic to present a photograph. This is how it should be. Across the street stands a sizable square, graced by a rather pleasing, if not for the green net, bank building, and a mundane tax office structure. Couldn't they really have been fashioned in a harmonious style? Young trees are neatly arranged in wooden boxes on the square, part of a project symbolizing Romania's renewal. Surrounding them are monuments to Romanian rulers, scientists and writers. They stand there observing all this as, well, let's just say they observe you. This one appears to be genuine Mark Twain, and he seems to gaze with some measure of disapproval. One of the relatively contemporary episodes in Romania that I'm personally familiar with is the overthrow of Ceausescu, a saga unfolding in the heart of Bucharest. This topic is unavoidable and, well, why not dive into it? I found myself standing on the edifice of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Romania. Initially constructed as the Ministry of Internal Affairs in 1950, it morphed into the building for the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Romania in 1959. It was on the ground floor of this very building that Ceausescu had his office. The narratives of dictatorships are undeniably fascinating to track, especially from today's perspective. In a nutshell, Ceausescu, who ascended to power in 1965 as a compromise candidate with limited support, initially embraced a somewhat liberal policy. He fostered alliances with Europe and the United States while maintaining relations with the Eastern Bloc and the USSR. Over time, although, he consolidated power, advocating for an independent foreign policy and ultimately altering the country's presidency selection process, essentially declaring himself president for life. Sounds familiar, but this story is about Ceausescu. Within Romania, he initially refrained from restricting the media, but he gradually amplified the powers of intelligence service to monitor citizens, drawing inspiration from North Korea, and reinstating censorship in 1971. In 1966, he also banned abortion and divorce in an attempt to boost the birth rate, although the outcome for this was far from positive. Simultaneously, the creation of the so-called New Historical Concept asserted Romania's historical rights to Moldavia and certain regions of Ukraine, a notion personally endorsed by Ceausescu. At the same time, after the pressure from the international community, a key opponent of Romanian communism, Ioann Church, was released from the jail. In the twilight of his rule, Ceausescu fell out with both the West and the East, forming ties with countries facing similar isolation: China, Cuba, North Korea, Iran, Libya, and Nicaragua. Mind you, it's still about Ceausescu, not someone else. Elsewhere, car production commenced thanks to aid and trade with Europe. Ceausescu even posed while driving the first Dacia car. However, when the most favored nation trade regime ended, the national currency sharply depreciated and ration cards were introduced. Despite these challenges, the official support of the Communist Party in the country remained exceptionally high. In all elections, the Communist Party of Romania claimed victory with a minimum of 97.7%. Just a month before the revolution, Ceausescu was re-elected as Secretary General with an unanimous 100% result. However, during this period, Ceausescu exhibited signs of a deteriorating mental state and developed pathological fears. He feared everything, from poisoning to murder and contracting diseases. His paranoia led to peculiar behaviors such as disinfecting his hands after handshakes and demanding that hotel items be ironed to eliminate germs. Now, shifting to the pivotal effects of December 1989, unrest erupted in Timișoara on December 16th due to the eviction of dissident Laszlo Tőkés, advocating for full ethnic autonomy in districts with a significant Hungarian population. Troops were deployed to suppress discontent, leading to clashes and rebels establishing their headquarters in the National Theatre and Opera building. On December 21st, a rally was held at the Central Committee building in Bucharest, aiming to gather public support for Ceausescu and obviously condemn the Timișoara uprising. However, the crowd expressed their discontent almost immediately after Ceausescu started his speech.
Doresc de asemenea să adresez mulțumiri inițiatorilor și organizatorilor acestei mari manifestări populare din București, considerând aceasta ca o
Ceausescu managed to continue eventually, promised economic improvements and went inside. But the protests persisted in both Bucharest and Timișoara, with the introduction of tanks and shootings. The situation spiraled out of control, resulting in over 1,000 casualties. On December 22nd, Ceausescu, along with his wife and others, fled by helicopter from the roof of the Central Committee building, but couldn't escape the country. The army supporting the rebels scrambled planes, leading to the arrest of Ceausescu and his wife in the south of Romania. The revolutionaries, standing on the balcony of the Central Committee building, famously cut out the communist coat of arms from the flag of the Socialist Republic of Romania. Fighting continued in Bucharest, primarily led by the Romanian secret force Securitate. However, within a day, realizing the futility of resistance, they ceased operation by December 25th. Nearby, the Odeon Theatre stands as a unique monument to the events of December 1989. In itself, it's rather unremarkable if you don't know where to look. You need to lift your head up, and then on the upper floors you'll see the traces of a shootout between Securitate employees and the rebels. The subsequent trial of Ceausescu sparked controversy, with some Romanians questioning the swift execution despite the provision of a 10-day appeal period. Skeptics argue that the noble fight against communism served as a cover for power struggles at the top. As usual, despite the participation in the revolution by the crowds, it was generals, diplomats, and seemingly loyal associates who orchestrated the overthrow. And thus, the somber historical excursion concludes. The building now houses the Ministry of Internal Affairs again, featuring the balcony from which Ceausescu addressed his people. Opposite stands the Renaissance Memorial, a light needle piercing a dark cloud in memory of the revolution's victims. To cap off the illustrations on Revolution Square, a mere 80 meters from the historic balcony stands a peculiar building. Its upper part is unmistakably modern, while the older lower part once served as the headquarters of the Romanian Secret Service, the Securitate, once nurtured by Ceausescu. After the revolution, Romanians deliberated over its fate, ultimately entrusting it to the Romanian Union of Architects, who fashioned it into their nest, preserving only the walls of the original structure. Alright, let's continue with the non-communist and more historic narrative. Luckily, we don't have to venture far. On the same square, just on the opposite side of the Ministry of Internal Affairs building, stands the Kretzulesku Church. This historic church, dating back to 1720 or 1722, was built by the boyar Iordache Kretzulescu and his wife Safta, the daughter of Prince Constantin Brancaveanu. Despite enduring earthquakes and military actions, including damage during the 1989 revolution, the church has undergone complete restoration and now offers a fascinating visit. You can explore its ancient tombstones and marvel of frescoes, with one dating back to 1722. The intriguing part? Surprisingly, there's no fencing or protection around these treasures. Originally, I intended to delve into the National Museum of Art in Romania. But I realized that weaving in a tale about the Romanian rulers first would avoid frequent interruptions for detours. So let's kick off with a monument to Carol I. Now, he is technically Karl, not to mention German rather than Romanian, hailing from the Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen family. Here's the gist. Concerns arose about Ottoman Empire claims over the unification of Wallachia, Transylvania and Moldavia into a single state of Romania, leading to the proposal of closer ties to Europe for Romania's protection. Since Romania lacked its own dynasty, the title of king was extended to a member of a younger yet royal branch of the Hohenzollerns, Karl Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, who became Carol I in Romania. This marked the inception of a brief reign of this branch of the Hohenzollern dynasty in Romania. Carol I, like any respectable monarch, possessed an impressive art collection featuring works by Rembrandt, Art-Deco, Rubens, Peter Bruegel the Elder, and more. This collection formed the foundation of the National Museum of Art, situated just across the square. The building itself, a former royal palace, underwent several reconstructions for different Romanian rulers and briefly served as a council of ministries during the Romanian People's Republic. Further down the road is another beautiful example of Bucharest's amazing Beaux Arts style buildings. Today, it's a hotel. Bucharest, with its motley mixture of various architectural styles, occasionally surprises with touching and very unexpected elements. Take, for instance, an ordinary road post adorned with poems or a memorial flag with a name that instantly catches the eye. A true symbol of Bucharest is the Romanian Athenaeum, a concert hall erected in 1888. Beyond musical concerts, it hosted significant events, including a meeting in 1919 that ratified the annexation of Bessarabia, Transylvania and Bucovina to form the so-called Greater Romania, the moment of the greatest expansion of the state. Fronting the building, a small park features a monument honoring the Romanian poet Mihai I. The hall serves as the home venue for the George Enescu Philharmonic Orchestra, with its museum housed nearby in the former Cantacuzino Palace. Built in 1913 by Gheorghe Cantacuzino, a mayor of Bucharest and leader of the Conservatives, nicknamed Nabob by his contemporaries, the palace reflects a blend of Art Nouveau and Beaux Arts styles. Despite the ongoing renovation obscuring its current appearance, cinema magic allows me to glimpse of its actual beauty. Among the undeniably beautiful buildings, Bucharest overall presents a diverse blend of styles, including some socialist-era ones with bas-reliefs. As I strolled further, an intriguing gathering of police, television crews and a general sense of bustle caught my attention. With no news coverage, I eventually decided to inquire with the police and learned that Vladimir Zelensky had arrived to Bucharest for a visit. Of course, not being invited to the reception, I headed to the square with the monuments to the heroes of aeronautics, featuring a statue of Icarus and bronze figures and flags honoring 179 air battle heroes from World War I. The sculptor, Lydia Kotzebue, captured the body of Icarus resembling the American boxer Joe Louis, who visited Romania at the time, and the head of the statue was based on a photograph from the pilot's album. Adjacent to the monument, a street lined with opulent yet almost uninhabited villas stands as a testament to the city's unique charm. I have been told that these villas are very expensive, due to the location of course, but nearly uninhabited because of the associated costs for maintenance. Bucharest holds two surprising features. First, a surprising number of exchange offices, which is understandable. Being so close to the Europe and yet keeping lei is confusing. The second feature are numerous pet stores and veterinary clinics, though the animals themselves remain discreet. Perhaps Romanians have a penchant for hamsters and parrots? Now, after the abandoned ones, let me introduce you to a special villa, the so-called Spring Palace. Formerly the personal residence of Nicolae Ceausescu and his family in the most prestigious area of Bucharest. It was closed from 1989 to 2014. Despite falling into disrepair during these 25 years and an unsuccessful attempt to sell it, it has been restored at state expense and now operates as a museum. With over 80 rooms personalized to the Ceausescu's couple preferences, the villa boasts a mosaic-adorned swimming pool, a garden frequented by peacocks and a greenhouse for growing exotic fruits. Such rulers always behave the same way. In yet another nod to the connection between Bucharest and Paris, Romania proudly hosts an almost exact replica of the Parisian Arc de Triomphe. clearly a very close one, although some differences are also visible. While some argue that the boulevard leading to it is Bucharest's version of the Champs-Élysées, opinions may differ. This arch is already the third on this site. The first wooden one was built in 1878 in honor of Romania's independence. It was designed so that the troops could march under it in a parade formation. The second arch, already with decoration and plaster sculptures, appeared here in 1922. And this is the third, stone and with an observation desk which replaced the second already in 1936, and in every possible way symbolizing the Romanian-French friendship. Under this arch, as well as under the very first one, military parades take place every 1st of December. Sports enthusiasts can explore the nearby Romanian Olympic Committee Museum, accompanied by a stadium and the headquarters of the Romanian Rugby Federation, one of the strongest in Europe and the world. And now, let's take a break from sports and architecture and explore something naturally fascinating nearby, a vast park. To kick things off, the park hosts its own museum, an open-air ethnographic museum showcasing the Romanian village. Houses from various regions across Romania were transported here, creating a unique village that captures the essence of different parts of the country. It's noteworthy that the museum originated in 1936, and 4 years later in 1940, following the annexation of Bessarabia and northern Bukovina to the USSR, according to a secret part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, families from those displaced regions were settled in the museum houses. Unfortunately, these did not yield positive results, and by 1942 the houses were instructed to be vacated. Though I may not be well versed in the intricacies of Romanian village construction, the place exudes tranquility and serenity. After escaping the bustling stone city I had just left behind, the park and museum offered a beautiful communion with nature. Once upon a time, there was a lake near Bucharest with the unpronounceable name Herăstrău. Surrounding the lake were swamps as usual. By 1936, everyone had grown wary of it, prompting the draining of the swamps and the creation of the park. This particular place holds the unique distinction of being renamed in honor of two different monarchs. The reasons for not reverting to the old name remain unclear to me. There appears to be no animosity towards King Carol II in Romania. However, history stands as it is. Over the years, it bore names like the National Park, Carol II Park, Stalin's Park, Herăstrău Park, and in 2016 it was renamed after Mihai I. During its days as a Stalin Park, a statue of Stalin graced the grounds until its demolition in 1956. Initially covering just over a square kilometer, with 0.7 square kilometers occupied by a lake, the park has now expanded to over 110 hectares. On the lake, besides the obligatory boat station, currently closed due to the season, some sails dot the horizon. Though I could not discern the exact type, it resembled a dinghy-like laser. Its pleasant sight, even if actual races might be challenging with a seemingly little wind. As I wandered through the park, a deep sense of nostalgia washed over me. It's not that it's neglected, but it's kind of groomed on a budget. Nothing is haphazard, there's no litter, the restrooms are clean and the paths aren't overgrown. Yet, if asphalt doesn't necessitate a replacement, it stays untouched. If a fountain can remain as it is, that's perfectly acceptable. It all feels like a visit to a regional park, frozen in my childhood. Back then, there was no belief that the tiles needed annual replacement. And at certain points, you can even spot attractions from the same era. All in all, the park feels quite cozy and very relaxing. The park also features scattered busts. While I couldn't discern a unified style of logic, it added a certain touch of amusement. You could be strolling and suddenly Mark Twain appears. Around the corner, the majestic and wise Leo Tolstoy emerges, and further on, there's William Shakespeare finds his place. Just when you think that the focus is on writers, they vanish, and it's Beethoven peering at you. Before you can recover, Glinka makes an appearance, looking slightly askance, followed by Leonardo da Vinci. In summary, I took a leisurely stroll, soaked in nostalgia, enjoyed some fresh air, and concluded my Bucharest adventure. The farthest point from the center that I reached in Bucharest was the unmistakable building of the so-called House of the Free Press. It's just another example of totalitarian aesthetics as promised. This video began with it, and it concludes with it. Stalin's high-rise indeed, erected from 1952 to 1956, following the design of Romanian architect Mihai I, inspired actually by Moscow State University's main building. It served as the editorial office and printing house for the main Romanian newspaper, Curtea, which is actually a spark in Romania. What can I say? Well, there's something about it, but it seems to me that the hefty bottom doesn't quite harmonize with the steep top. It's as if the building's middle had been excised. Nevertheless, the 92-meter tower, without an antenna, reigned as the tallest building in Romania until 2007. For 30 years, a 7-meter monument of Lenin stood in front of it, as expected of course. For once, the leader didn't point to a bright future. However, even this modesty didn't save him. In 1990, the statue was removed from its pedestal, sparkling a saga of monuments on the site. From a monument made of sweets, grain and rice, to Lenin's replacement with a hydra adorned with flowers instead of a head. And finally, the erection of the monument called Wings on a slightly modified pedestal, which was built from 2002 to 2016, actually longer than the building that stands behind. In the end, Bucharest turned out to be a delightful surprise for me, a time capsule and a journey into childhood. Beaux Arts is undeniably beautiful, but I also appreciated the combination of slight unkemptness and different historical periods not sanitized to nauseating blandness, but accepted as part of the city's charm. Is it worth visiting Bucharest? Yes, but ensure your trip plan includes a diverse perspective of Romania, so that the country can demonstrate all its beauty to you. With that, from me personally, thank you very much for your company today. And see you in the next episode. Ne vedem, Bucharest!